Hi, I'm Phil Coutu. I'm here with Insurance Claim Radio, owner of RoofTop Roofing, Rooftop Restoration, Power Appraisers, Power Adjusters, and Insurance Claims School. Also sitting on me is my experts, Mike from Pro Roofing. Mike, your phone number?
It's 720-628-7293.
And we're also here with Chip from Chip's Roofing. He's also an expert with many, many years in the field, standing up for the consumer and fighting claims. Chip, your phone number?
720-938-ROOF, 7663. Yeah.
And my direct phone number, anytime, this is my cell number. Best way to contact me is by text, 720-296-3492. And hey guys, we're back here. It's our second show. We wanted to talk about one of the first topics to start off on is we were just wrapping up the other show, and we were talking about time limitations. We're also going to go forward I'll let you bring that up, Mike.
Yeah.
Mike's just showing me some notes. We're going to talk about identifying the time limitations within the Colorado insurance policies for filing suit. So most people don't think about this at all because you really don't want to get in who wants to get in a lawsuit? I don't know anybody who wants to get in a lawsuit. The gentleman sitting at the table right now, Mike with Pro Roof Solution and Chip with Chip's Roofing, we've all actually been through some lawsuits fighting for the clients. One of the real important things that I've noticed as a regular insurance adjuster when I worked for the insurance industry and now as a consumer advocate is how it's important, people don't want to deal with the topic of their roof, there's issues, and if you get dragged through certain statute of limitations, first is reporting your claim timely, you can be barred from suit. Also, depending on your policy, 2-3 years, we basically have about 3 years on residential and 2 years on commercial, so your claim could be open. If you don't have your claim settled well before those statute of limitations are up and coming, it's really important to either get an extension, which is called a tolling agreement with the insurance company. If they don't want to give you that and you can't settle, make your good faith attempt to settle. But if you can't, it's important to get a lawsuit filed to protect that statute of limitations. Either of you guys ever had to use that to protect your clients or recommend them to an attorney?
Yeah, pretty much just about every large loss we get.
Every large loss. So let's point out, too, that there's a lot more dollar value in large losses. We're talking large losses. We're talking multiple hundred square to thousands of squares, often 800,000, a million plus. Some of these large losses go up into the tens of millions in Colorado. There's even some that can approach 50, 60 million. In Colorado, but that is rare. But there's many that are in the 1 to about 6-7 million range, and that's really important. You want to expand upon that, Chip?
Usually when you start a large loss, you'll get out there, you'll see the damage, you'll have them call the insurance company. They'll come out, they'll see the damage, and they'll turn around and say, nope, got to bring an engineer. So usually the minute they figure they're going to bring the engineer, you figure, okay, so now they're upping the ante, so now we have to up the ante. Usually that means a public adjuster. So then, because in most cases the engineer is not on the consumer side because they are working for the insurance company, you have to bring, the public adjuster all of a sudden has to bring in a statement of loss, which gives them like 45 days or whatever to bring that in. And then it becomes more of a no fun claim anymore. It becomes now they're doing everything they can to cover it. Our side's doing everything they can to get it covered. And usually that brings in the attorneys and moves everything to the plane where you don't really want to go.
So we're going to get into that, but Chip said something really interesting, really interesting, where he said the engineers are working for the insurance companies. Do you want to expand on that, Chip? I don't want you to be biased, but I just want to give you, both of you guys, give me your personal experience from when you're working a large claim and the adjuster says, oh, we got to bring an engineer in. What does that trigger? What does that mean to you guys?
that triggers my defensive mode. It's like, oh, they don't want to cover it. They're bringing the engineer in to give them a reason not to cover it and to scare the building owner or homeowner, because the engineer has power. What he writes, brings things to mind like, oh my God, if he writes this, they're going to cancel my policy. Then what? Oh my God, what am I going to do? So it's a fear tactic that I believe the insurance industry uses against the building owner or the client to not cover something. And if you're not prepared for it, which public adjusters are more prepared for it than a roofing contractor would be, then, you be prepared to lose.
Mike, what does it trigger in you when that happens?
We all get this red flag that kind of goes up, and it says, "Oh, no, they're wanting to fight us on it." And like what Chip just said, they hire these adjusters. We try to meet these, these engineer people out there, or they're experts. It could be a forensic engineer. It could be. We use all different kind of tools. I have Phil tell you about that, but weather people, all different types of stuff. But when that happens, then like he said, we do kind of get into our defensive mode. Our hair kind of gets up on our back, and we kind of just take this approach that, okay, we've got to go out there and approve it. So, if we're going to go out on a flat roof, if it's an EPDM roof or a TPO roof, they're going to take core samples, and core samples means that we're going to go ahead and take a physical sample of this roof to find out what's under it, how it's been damaged, or if the hail came in, if it's if it's damaged the TPO, then we'll take a little bit of a sample there to find out that it is or isn't.
Okay, so we established your guys' hair stands up when the engineer is coming in on the insurance side. When you guys bring in your own engineer, I assume, how often are the opinions the same as the insurance company? How often is your engineer's opinion the same as the insurance company's? And how far apart is it?
I think the only opinion they have in common is that they're both engineers.
How about you, Mike?
Yeah, I'm in agreement. Geez, you get these engineers out there, and one will say one, and the other one sees the other one. And, like I said, you want to take your glasses off on the face and say, hey, would you like to both see one eye, and can we come together in this agreement, right?
It makes me scared to drive across bridges because two engineers don't have the same opinion on anything.
It's really interesting. Let's face it, the borrower is always beholden to the lender. Now, one thing that you guys know is I worked for the insurance industry for a long time. I was a partner in a catastrophe adjusting franchise, and I've had many adjusters under me. I've worked from such companies as Citizens Florida, Citizens Louisiana. I've done claims through catastrophe companies. I've done claims for good companies such as USA. There's different lists of companies. One thing for our viewers to understand is often when companies spend a lot of money, and they have a lot of market share, they have a higher claims problematic ratio, I guess is my easiest way to put it into terms. They have more claim disputes. One great place to go look at insurance companies rated, and it's called Fight Bad Faith Insurance Companies. I think it's Fight Bad Faith. I think it's FB Insurance Claims. Just look up Fight Bad Faith Insurance Companies, and I know it's .org, and they have a listing of the top 100 insurance companies that are bad and the top 100 insurance companies that are good, that have less problems. I find the stats fascinating, and they take the volume. If you read on there, I don't have it up in front of me now, they'll take the volume of claims filed and the volume of problematic claims. They have their own ratio, it says on there. And so they'll rate the insurance companies that have the most problems. And the really interesting thing is often it is the insurance companies that are doing the most advertising or have the most market share. And, I'm not looking to pick a dispute with any of the insurance companies out there, but that is a fact, whether they like it or not, but the consumer should check that out. Let's get back to the topic of engineers, because what I've always found fascinating is I'm a roofer, and I've been an adjuster, and I'd be out there adjusting. I'd be like, okay, I've seen thousands of roofs. Why do I need an engineer to tell me if the roof is damaged? I mean, especially on shingles. Why do I need an engineer to tell me if it's damaged? And there's one conclusion that I've come to a lot of times, is that often we're too scared to make the call, or we're put into, as an adjuster, it's why I'm not doing adjusting right now for the insurance companies. Some of the companies would put us into a box where we can't even make the call. And I mean, it's pretty common sense a lot, and that's why you guys can take your homeowners up with photos and often show them the damage. And it's really interesting because when you have really good experts, the common sense rule usually does win. You know, you don't have to be an engineer to tell if your roof's damaged in most cases. However, though, when you get into flat roofing, that a properly seasoned engineer can be quite valuable for looking for the forensic damage, the damage that's hidden, that's going to manifest itself on multi-million-dollar roofs 2-3 years down the road when you're past the statute of limitations and now your consumer or policyholder doesn't have any rights left. And that's a really, really big deal that I get into, and I always tell people it's extremely important. So getting back to the engineer opinions, any guys have any comments on that, of just opinions that you've seen you don't like? And we'll be going to commercial break in 30 seconds here, but somebody can go ahead and start.
Great, thank you.
Oh, God, I think you should.
Okay, we'll be back. Do you have a commercial hail claim? Troubled hail claim? Underpaid claim? Missed damages? Bad faith? Possible legal action? RoofTop Restoration is a leading hail loss consumer advocate for poorly handled insurance claims. We specialize in hail damage, large commercial claims, and provide the total claims package risk-free. We pay and cover all expert costs, engineers, attorneys, roof inspectors, adjusters. We get you what you deserve under your insurance policy. Finance large deductibles, all the experts, experience, and stellar reputation with zero out-of-pocket costs. Risk-free. Call or text RoofTop Restoration at 720-296-3492. Call or text at 720-296-3492. That's 720-296-3492. And check us out at rooftoprestoration.com. Hi, we're back here with Insurance Claim Radio. This is Phil Coutu with RoofTop Restoration and Power Appraisers. We've got to my left Mike Neely with Pro Roof Solutions and Chip with Chip's Roofing. Our topic that we left off with is we're discussing engineers and experts. So I'm going to turn back to Mike and Chip to give us some of their stories about the engineers and experts when an insurance company says, oh, we need to get an engineer in.
Yeah, engineer is really, really important who you pick as your engineer. They've got their experts and, their investigation on their sides. We have to also prove that claim on our side. So, it's a decision that's going to be, that you're going to have to usually make between both people. You're going to, meet this engineer out there, and he could be very biased one way or another. That's what I would say is that make sure that the engineer that you put in there is going to investigate it. He's going to be able to check every avenue in order to getting a roof purchased and bought. And so that's what I would say. Chip.
I look at it as I find it kind of interesting that you see the same engineers over and over and over again. They're professional engineers. They're licensed by the state. They have their own association. But it seems to me that they only work for the insurance industry.
I think that's a super important point. How are you going to get a real fair shake from an expert if they're making most of their financial income for the year from a specific insurance company? So something for all you roofers out there and public adjusters to be highly aware of. First thing that I always do, I see and I ask the question, how much work are you doing for the insurance industry? I'm looking for a guy that's doing less than 50-50 or no more than 50-50, which, the insurance companies have a much higher volume rate than the guys on the other side. So it's extremely important to do your due diligence on all your experts. And sometimes it can be quite hard to find the right forensic expert that has enough experience but isn't fully involved working with the insurance with high volume, because that creates an automatic conflict. Now, I'm not saying for everybody. There's a few engineers I know out there that will give you a fair shake either way. They're fantastic. One of them, I won't say his name on air just because he does work for the insurance company. always given us a fair shake when we've been against them, and always has been very reasonable in trying to find the truth. But there is a lot of experts I've run into too, and you're like, what are you looking at, man? Like, seriously. The stuff that's going on out there, I'll get certain names come up, and I'll be like, great. You know, we're not going to get an honest report. And the other big thing, don't you guys find it, that they've kind of got the engineers in a box because they're not allowed to talk policy? So if you're talking about a policy with direct physical damage, and the engineer's sitting here looking at cosmetic, functional, and all these made-up terms of what damage is, oh yeah, we can't comment on it. We're sitting here not going... People need to know something. A lot of times engineers is getting into what's called functional damage. They're not talking about direct physical damage. They're talking about damage
that you can live with.
Yeah, damage you can live with. It's a perfect section of, like, if there's a hole in the shingle, okay, well, we'll pay for it. But if there's not a hole in the shingle, oh, well, it's not functional, it didn't go through the shingle. And I'm sitting there going, well, you just had a 2-inch hailstone hit my shingle, smashed all the aggregate out, probably took 20-30% of its life off my shingle, looks horrible, and you're telling me that's okay because the shingle's still water shedding. What's your guys' comment on that?
You could live with that.
Yeah.
It's sort of like when, you know, again, if your car gets smacked with hail, you just bought this brand spanking new beautiful car, it gets hit with hail. So not only are you losing 20% the minute you drive off the lot, but when the car gets hit itself, even the dealer takes another 20% off it. So if you buy that car, that's damage you can live with. But it's functional damage. Your engine still runs, your car still rolls down the street, but it's functional damage. And that's what they're saying on metal roofs and stuff like that. Oh, it's not affecting how the roof works. Okay, so, but I just painted my house this beautiful color to keep it in beautiful shape. Why wouldn't I want a beautiful, non-dented roof over my beautiful home?
Right. And that's Chip with Chips Roofing. We got Mike to left me. We have another show up and coming. We're going to be talking about a new thing called the cosmetic damage exclusion that's been popping up in policies, which the listeners, you should be of interest because it really can affect... you're getting a very small discount, and we're going to give you some tips how to get around it, how to challenge it, to make sure you have proper insurance. So I'll tell you guys an interesting story. Probably the most famous hail engineer in the country I was against about 4 years ago, and I was very, very worried. It was in another state outside of Colorado, and it was a giant television station. And so I flew in to a roofing convention to hear this guy speak. And he actually said in the convention, this guy's written articles. He's the insurance guru for hail. He was writing about hail damage and laboratory testing before I was born. I'm not lying. I think his first paper came out in the late 60s. I wasn't alive yet. So I had to go see this guy because I was against them, and I needed to win this claim, and it was a very, very challenging claim. And he actually said to about 100 people in the audience, well, you know, my take is I'm not an insurance adjuster, everybody, but my take is what the insurance companies basically say for dented metal. If you can't see it for the ground, don't worry about it. And he said that to 100 people. And I wanted to get up, but I was against them, so I didn't want to. I was there just to do research. I was shaking my head going, hey, I don't see that in the policy. And they're going, well, what do you mean? He goes, well, if you can't really see it from the ground, there's no real loss to the client. So that's kind of the rule of thumb that we're using. And most of the guys in there were forensic experts working for the insurance company, and we're insurance adjusters. And that's the stuff that there's a lot of indoctrination, you know, going on out there. And so for me, when I was an adjuster, I would always challenge this stuff. Hey, well, the policy says this. And I'll give you guys another quick story. I was working in Florida in the hurricanes, and I called up a really good friend of mine who's a case manager, many, many years, 30-plus years right in the insurance business, working for the state insurer. And I said, hey, I'm here with this public adjuster. And this was about 2004. And so at that point, there wasn't that many public adjusters except within Florida. So I hadn't really had much exposure to him. And this guy pulled up in his Miata, and he was really arrogant. I really honestly didn't like him. And I did end up going to work for him after I was done with the insurance, but I'll tell you why I didn't like him. He insulted the girl next to me and said he doesn't roll to bed till 10. And he'll turn me into the state as an adjuster if I don't get my butt out of there on this day. And I basically said, hey, man, I'll see you in 5 months. I'm busy. And he actually complained. And so my case manager called me. So this guy rolls up. I'm say, fine. We fit him in about 4 days later. He rolls up in his Miata. I'm like, hey, he's like, no, Phil. You owe me to resand the whole floors of this multi-million-dollar house. And I said, well, we've got like a 3-inch spot. So I'm going to cut it off at the door. He goes, no, there's no molding on the floor. You got to go all the way through. And I'm like, no, I don't. The policy says repair, replace. And so just to make sure, I'm on a policy, and you know, this is 14 years ago, and I go in, I call my case manager, hey, tell me clear me up what the rules in Florida. I just got a little bit of damage in one room, and this guy wants me to do the kitchen, the hallways, 3 other bedrooms, all these beautiful floors. And he goes, Phil, the policy says repair, right? And I said, yes, it does. Well, so I told him, hey, man, I'm just paying for that one room. We'll have to blend it in. And he goes into his car, hits print on a button, walks out, passes me a Florida statute that basically says, at the time, in 2004, I had to match all the floors. And I'm like, holy cow. My own case manager, my own friend, just kind of misled me, right? And, you know, the ball of stuff rolls downhill 8 months, a year later. So what I had to do is I took that statute, I resandled all those floors. It was like $45,000 in this house, turned it in to that same case manager with that statute, and I never heard a word. So, you know, when I was younger, I got a really good introduction to how, you know, and you know, did it seem kind of unreasonable to sand all those floors to me? Yeah, it seemed like a waste of money. So I want to be honest on that. However, that insurance policy said, and the statute in Florida says, you know, we're going to match and everything's going to be congruent. So I did it that way, and I thought it might get kicked back, but it just sailed through that $45,000. And I made sure I sent it to the manager that told me, who was my friend. So that was one of the points when I really started to wake up in insurance and do a lot more research and not believe what I was told on all the insurance company cheat sheets. I'm like, hey, what does this policy really say? And if you guys have ever read a policy, it's not fun. The first time I sat down with a policy, I was already an adjuster for like 10 years. I never really read it because we get cheat sheets, to be honest. And let's face it, we're all lazy. We're getting paid hourly. They're giving me the cheat sheet on the policy. So it tells me what I can and can't do in 2 sheets instead of like 10 or 20. And so that's what we have, and it's a good rule of thumb. And they're changing sometimes because the policy sometimes is pretty ambiguous. And it's very hard to understand. And the way it's written, good luck. I just dare all the policyholders out there, go read their policy and try to understand their coverage. It's really important. And so it brings me to, you can just write your broker, what does this mean? Get them on the record.
That's the same thing with the code book. I mean, the code book really says nothing. You know, it's not firm in any decision it makes. The code book is a conglomeration of testing data that the cities are trying to write a code on, and when they don't come up with their own, when the cities don't come up with their own stuff, you really have no code. I mean, there's really nothing to base anything on. So the insurance companies are allowed to come in and say, oh yeah, 3-tab meets 130 miles an hour because the code just doesn't say anything. It says ASTM 3160, 61G and H, but a 3-tab is tested to that. You know?
How about this one? They have a code, and it says the strict is either the manufacturer, whatever is stricter, and then the insurance company goes, oh, well, we called such and such city, and they're not enforcing that. How many of you guys have got that?
We all have.
Okay, are you guys winning that?
I am now because I'm going down there and I'm saying, you're flat out, the only thing the code is clear on is manufacturer specs rule. And the wind warranty from the manufacturer is a manufacturer spec. So their 60 mile an hour wind warranty on a 3-tab shingle versus their 150 mile an hour ASTM standard, they're forced to print that on the bundle, but this is what they're going to cover. They're not covering any more than 60 miles an hour. That is a factory manufacturer specification.
See, and that's why I got these guys on here. It's Mike with Pro Roof and Chip with Chip's Roofing. We're just here to have a nice open forum so the consumer out there can understand there's a lot going on in insurance. Let's put it this way. You're not getting more and more coverage in your policy if you start to read them over. It's like every year it's changing, and generally it's going the wrong way. And there's a lot of gray areas. It is not black and white. I'm constantly up against the insurance company saying, well, the city said this. And I'm like, well, if you look at the code book and they adopted this code, it says the city doesn't really have the authority to lessen the code, and they just don't. There is certain ways to lessen the code, and it's basically at the policyholder's request. I had one that took a claim with a prominent giant condo association that I had personally in Fort Collins, and we were in appraisal. I was the appraiser, and I had this very well-respected umpire. I was at $1.6 million. The insurance company was at $33,000, and I had the appraiser for the insurance company turn to me and say, hey, I've got a roof for 20 years and a roof for 30 years, one at $154,000 and one at $196,000. First thing I did is I looked up those two roofers, the preferred contractors, called them, asked a bunch of questions, looked at their bid. It was garbage. I was sitting in the appraisal at IHOP with the umpire and the appraiser, and the umpire said to me, Phil, would you take $250,000? And I panicked, and I pretty much told everybody, this is wrong. I'm sending out an email right now. I need more time. And I had to drag it out for another 8 months. And I had to go meet with the city. And I had to go meet with an engineer at the city. And I asked them, did you tell the insurance company this? And they do not have the right to lessen the code. And they stamped off on all of our engineering. And I went back to that meeting and said, okay, here's the truth. Everybody's lying. They're calling up pretending they're the client saying, can we do this? And the insurance company is saying, well, yeah, if you get a variance, you can do this. Well, we're not asking for it. And we actually did need a partial variance for that because our insulation on a roof deck was going to go above the window. So I ended up saying to the city, can I do half of the insulation, the new code requirement, and get a variance because of the hardship? And they gave it to me. And I ended up settling that claim just shy of $1.3 million. We went back, and the umpire said, look at this. I guess Phil's right. And these roofers can't do the roof for that because their whole scope was wrong. They were going to put shingles back over fiberboard, not an actual nailable surface. And it's fascinating, you guys, what goes on. And we all got tons of war stories like that. I've done like over 250 appraisals. So most of them back in the day, too. I'm only doing about 8 to 10 a year these days.
The cities just don't want to field the thousands of calls they're getting from the insurance industry every day, and they don't want to field ours either.
So the most important thing is you need to make sure how they write the scope and who's writing the scope and who's understanding policy.